What is the best way to sabotage your own story? You have to destroy the best part of it. And what is that? The characters? The world building? Maybe there's a theme that really resonates with people. Mushoku Tensei excels in all of that. Its characters feel like real people. The world operates in a believable manner. And the theme is something that many of us resonate with. It's the best story about redemption and second chances in the medium. But suddenly people started hating on it. Why? Because there's a harem? No, that's not it. It is true that harems are almost always terrible in anime. Not because they're harems, but because the authors usually degrade the characters into tools. They become tropes instead of people. If a work of fiction explores an interesting topic in a coherent and meaningful way, then there should be no issues with it. Roxy was an amazing tutor for Rudius, and that was the main reason he was finally able to take his first step in his new life. When she left the Grey Rat family, you could feel the bond between everyone here. When Eris leaves Rudius, you understand why she felt it was necessary, even though in reality she was being extremely socially inept in the worst way possible. When Sylphie reappears in the anime, you see that she's evolved from the girl that Rudius protected as a child into a person who can now return the favor, saving him from his depression. Then Rudius forgets that he just had a depression arc, has a second one, and Roxy devolves into an instrument that fucks him out of it. Yes, I know it's handled a bit differently in the light novel, but the end result is still the same. Mushoku Tensei has some of the best world building in the isekai genre. So it's said that this specific part, which is a significant scene that ends the second season, is so poorly written in comparison. Most men in the audience are going to give it more of a pass because, well, they're men. Do I really need to go deeper in that analysis? However, some men, and I imagine most women, are put off by it quite a bit, which is such a shame, because they may drop the series despite it being otherwise great. It's an exceptional story about giving hope to the hopeless, so wouldn't it be a tragedy to throw it all away because of one or two bits of bad writing? As a work of fiction, one important element of world building is how you write your characters. When you experience it, there are certain elements that need to be followed through on. If there's a character arc, then from that moment on, that character should show that growth. An arc of character growth should never be repeated for the same character, as it's telling you, the viewer, that the initial growth arc didn't matter. That is the primary issue I have with this part of Mushoku Tensei. Rudius' depression arc is beautiful. Rudius was Eris's pillar of strength throughout their ventures after the displacement incident. Without him, she would have been in a foreign land, with demons she's been taught to fear from birth, speaking a language she couldn't understand. It was Rudius who gave her the strength she needed to make the journey back home, and because of that, she no longer wished to idolize him, but to become his equal. She wanted to grow, not just as a warrior, but as a woman to become suitable for the man she loved, to hone her sword to forge a future together with him. That wasn't something she could do by standing in the shadow. And so she gave herself to him to solidify their bond, and then left a note assuming he'd understand her intentions. Unfortunately, the only thing Eris ever built up was her sword skills. Her social skills were non-existent, and Rudius interpreted her message as the exact opposite. Instead of seeing it as "I'm going to get stronger to be your equal, so please wait for me," he read it as "You're not on my level, so I'm leaving you." Thus, Eris ended up shattering the person she cared about the most, in a manner so bad that it cascaded into a series of events where Rudius took a knife and pointed it at his own neck. But luckily, Rudius had others around to save him. He forged bonds with them, and those were what gave him hope in his darkest moment. It wasn't easy, but there was a shining star, Sylphie, that rescued him, much like how he rescued her as a child. She was able to heal Rudius' broken heart, his trust issues with women, and his lack of confidence in himself. Sure, she wasn't as strong as him, but that's not what love is about. Love should be two people complementing each other's strengths and weaknesses in a meaningful way that makes them both stronger for it. And that's why this arc is so compelling. Mushoku Tensei has the best ED in anime history. Eris and Sylphie are foils of one another in regards to their bond with Rudius. Eris, dissatisfied with her shortcomings in the battlefield, seeks out strength to become his equal partner. Sylphie, instead, seeks to match him not sword for sword, but heart to heart. While Eris beds Rudius out of her own desires and her own loss, Sylphie does so in concert with him. When Eris abandons him, with plans of an eventual return, Sylphie stayed by his side until he woke, gently smiling at him and giving Rudius the assurance he needed to vanquish what was left of his emasculating fear. The girls are both alike and unlike, both nurturing him in different ways. Eris was Rudius' first experience with real love, being there for him their entire journey across the whole world, giving him reason to finally kill his old degenerate self, the distraction that prevented him from being the man that can protect the people he cares about. And when that seemingly came back to bite him, Sylphie was there to bring him back from his despair. They were both there for him in ways apart but impactful in their nature, all to serve Rudius' greater strength. The woman he loved brought him to tears, and another one put back together what the first shattered. To become strong, Rudius must come to terms with that nature of women, both as the naive girl who herself stumbles in her hopeful desire, and the half-elf whose enduring affection binds him closer to that world and awareness of his greater purpose in it. What Eris sparks, Sylphie turns into a flame. Tears of sadness and remorse, tears of joy and hope. These are the lessons that only strong women can provide to Rudius, even if they are themselves flawed. Only by confronting his traumas and potential fully may he prove himself to be beyond the loser he was in his previous life. And so he does. Season 2 progresses to the end, where the weak former incel is now the empowered married father-to-be on a quest to bring his family back together. He has grown through both suffering and joy, and now has the maturity to become his father's equal. Strong, principled, able to handle anything. And then the end of Season 2 happens. Rudius' growth is thrown out, he is no longer a faithful husband and brings home a second wife. Now, as a man, I can understand the attractiveness of a short blue-haired demon femcel. But dude, you have a wife with a child on the way. How are you going to relapse into depression and pretend that the entire depression arc we just finished didn't even happen? It's not even that we're pretending that the arc didn't happen, but the fact that Rudius ends up having a second depression arc that gets concluded in an episode and a half. From a literary perspective, if you're going to repeat a plot or story element, it should not match the original story beat one for one. Rudius just had a major depression arc. As such, making him have another mini depression arc undermines the first one and yields an undeserved second wife in Roxy, which, despite being foreshadowed well beforehand, is an insult to his oath to Sylphie. And worst of all, it does this after the conclusion of the main story arc that Mushoku Tensei was telling. Mushoku Tensei has been a magnificent story about second chances and redemption. The entire story has been building up to Rudius finally being able to leave his past life behind and learning to live life again. Remember, this whole story began with Rudius not even going to his original parents' funeral. They may have been his parents, but he wasn't really their son. He wasn't really anyone, just a being that existed. But that has changed. He learned to have feelings again. He learned to care about others. He learned that he had to change his ways or he'd scare off the people he cared about. There were ups. There were downs. And at the end of his journey, he proved he was a better man than he was in his first life. When his parents were in the belly of the well, instead of wallowing in self-pity, he dove in to save them. He fought side by side with his father who spoke the one thing he'd always wanted to hear. That which told him that he was now a man equal to his father, no longer a child that needed to be coddled.
Hi!
And at that moment, Mushoku Tensei could have ended and been a complete redemption story. But of course that would be a bit unsatisfying. Could you imagine the story just ending there? There were way too many interesting things that have been brought up to just conclude the story there, right? Mushoku Tensei has 2 stories in it. One is the redemption story I just went over. This is the main story arc I mentioned. The other has only been hinted at through that story. With the original narrative having just been concluded, it is now time for the other plot to take off. And what is the first thing that happens in this new arc? Rudius gets Paul killed and goes into a mini depression that Roxy fucks him out of. Yeah, I said it again, because Roxy got depersoned into a sex slave. That is what happened here. I know in the light novel there's an actual conversation which is what initially begins to draw Rudius back from despair. But I think we could skip those details because it already has happened in the story. Everything that happened starting from this scene until the end of Season 2 undermines Rudius' prior redemption arc. Sure, he got his father killed. It's okay to be sad because of that. But what was Paul's last conversation with Rudius? Save your mother even if it kills you. Paul was ready to make the ultimate sacrifice to save Zenith. And with his death, Rudius' sorrow should be the ground for him to remember his father's legacy and will, to take on the responsibility of being his father's heir, to protect his family in Paul's place, Zenith, Norn, Aisha, Lilia, and of course, Sylphie and his child. He was supposed to be his father's equal, but instead, he became weak again. All just for a damn harem that doesn't add Roxy the person to his life, but Roxy the tool. All of Rudius' prior growth this whole season was undercut. Unlike Eris and Sylphie, who were great female characters that helped Rudius grow, Roxy just became a trophy, an object, a means to an end. Was there truly no other option? Well, in the light novel, Rudius chooses to remain faithful to Sylphie. He tells Roxy and Ellen Elise that he will not betray his wife. He will tell her that he did cheat on her, and would do whatever he could to regain her confidence even if it took the rest of his life. However, on their trip back home, Ellen Elise had a conversation about the situation with Rudius. And in that conversation, Ellen Elise heavily implies that Roxy is pregnant, Roxy being absent from this conversation. Rudius chooses to marry Roxy because he would not just up and abandon her to be a single mother like he had nothing to do with her situation. She was practically already family before this whole thing happened. What man would do that to a woman? Rudius taking responsibility for his mistake was meant to be a sign of strength that the anime threw out completely. Unfortunately, even with all the foreshadowing, this entire situation was contrived, and that's the issue. Obviously, the author really wanted Rudius to be married to both Sylphie and Roxy, and as mentioned at the beginning of this video, I would be fine with that if it was done correctly. Correctly does not mean undermining character growth to get from point A to point B. So, instead of just complaining about it, here's the option I would have gone with that has the same end result without murdering Rudy's and Roxy's character growth, i.e., Rudius has to marry Roxy at the end of this and Paul has to die. Rudius has already had his depression arc, and it was cured by Sylphie. On the other hand, Roxy has been out of the story for a pretty long while. We've seen elements of her character being developed, with her being isolated from her village, being alone for a long time, and eventually finding a second home with the Grey Rats. My solution is that Roxy should be the one who ends up getting Paul killed. Roxy becomes depressed, and Rudius saves her from that depression. Instead of repeating the arc that Rudius just had, he takes what he learned from it and applies it to someone else. Obviously, Rudius is sad that Paul died. There should be a chapter or so of him coming to terms with it. As Paul's son and equal, Rudius inherits his responsibilities, and that means taking care of his mothers and sisters in Paul's place. He would then see just how depressed Roxy is, not eating or drinking due to her guilt. Rudius is the only one with cause to judge her for her actions, but it's because of that he's the only one who can offer her forgiveness for them. He can save her like Sylphie saved him. It was Roxy that truly gave Rudius the chance to start his second life. Now Rudius is extending his arm to offer the same thing back to her. And with that, he understands what Paul meant by needing his two swords by his side. He'd speak to Roxy, with him implying he's from another world and felt his parents in it, not even knowing how they died. But because of that, his regrets about his original parents is what allows him to bridge the gap between him and Roxy. Rudius would take home Roxy as his wife, with a similar conversation happening with Norn, but with the added bonus that Sylphie can see that all Rudius really did was what she originally did for him. It shows growth on Rudius' part, it gives much needed growth to Roxy, and it brings everything back in full circle. It was Roxy that opened the world up for Rudius. It was Rudius that saved Sylphie as a child. It was Sylphie who saved Rudius from depression. And now Rudius is saving Roxy from hers. Would this suggestion make everything perfect? No, but it's much better than what we got. From a literary perspective, it's not repeating the last arc, but evolving from it. I think this is what the author was trying to achieve. All the elements I mentioned were already there. He just assembled them wrong, which took away from Rudius' redemption story. Again, that was the main plot of the series up to this point. If you guys have any other improvements you would suggest, I would love to hear them, so please post them in the comments below. Anyway, that's enough of my fanfictioning. It's just that I love Mushoku Tensei and want it to be the best it can be, and unfortunately, this one part of the series is terrible in comparison to everything else in it. Yeah, it's not a perfect story, but by and large, it's pretty damn good. For the most part, the author is a literary master. Yes, a couple of weird or contrived points every now and then, but nothing else is as bad as this part. As such, I do hope that even if this part of the anime or light novel turned you off, you are willing to continue with the series. The other plot that the story has been giving inklings to is going to start popping off, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that animated. As for Rudius, he does come to the conclusion that his sisters and mothers are his responsibility now. Going forward, and this is a minor spoiler, he tries to help his sisters and prepare them for the future. He does what he believes is best for his mother, hoping that his decisions would make his father proud of him. He didn't just want to waste away wallowing in self-pity. He overcame adversity and is now a guiding light for the other members of his family. It's great growth to see, and I think it's a great lesson to have in the series. Rudius is making good on his second chance. We just had a slight derailment en route to this point. Mushoku Tensei is still one of the best written stories in the light novel and anime medium. Most of the controversies, I believe, can be dismissed with people just not understanding what the work of fiction is trying to tell, but yes, even a truly great work is going to have some actual flaws to it. And this whole situation is one, but don't forget the journey we had up to this point. There was a reason you watched the series for 48 episodes, so aside from one or two hiccups, I'm hoping people will remember it for what it excelled at rather than its flaws. At the end of the day, it is a story about discovering hope after one has lost it. A story about second chances, not only given to you by others, but also giving a second chance to yourself, to overcome your own sorrows and self-doubt, that even the most broken of us can still have worth in this world, and we just need to work towards it. And once we overcome the barriers in our own lives, we can be a positive influence on the others we see going through the same darkness we've overcome. When your parents pass away, you don't want to question what they thought about you. You don't want to be ignorant of how they passed. Live in a manner that you know they'd be proud of you, a manner in which they'd see you as an equal, not as a child. Inherit the responsibilities of shepherding in a better world for future generations.